Thank you for watching Conversation Starters. My name is Chad Keene, former mayor and current council member of Bristol, Tennessee. And we have with us today Mayor Jack Young, serving currently as our mayor. I want to say thank you to Tim Flanagan, the video guy, for producing, and also Keene Promotions for hosting us today. Jack, let's talk a little bit about your history, where you've lived, places that you've served, and things of that nature.
Sure. Well, it's great to be with you all today. I appreciate Keene Promotions sponsoring this opportunity, and it's always a great time to be able to talk about what's going on as well as where we've been too. So for me personally, one of those opportunities, I grew up in the Atlanta area, and when I decided to go off to college, I had a great scholarship opportunity down at Clearwater Christian College down in the Tampa Bay area. That few years turned into an opportunity at a company named King Pharmaceuticals after I'd gotten my my science degrees, and ended up spending 8 years down there with King, and then that became Bristol for me in 2008. And as that opportunity continued to develop, I spent most of my time there in drug manufacturing with an emphasis on quality control. So a lot of chemistry and science and math. I enjoyed it very much, and those are really the three places I've lived and a lot of what I've done. And then there's some of those volunteer opportunities that I've been able to get involved with as well.
Well, it's good to have a perspective from other areas of the country, and I think that's a real asset and a diversity for our council. You serve on several committees and boards. Why don't you go into that a little bit on where you serve?
Sure. As a resident, I serve with the Salvation Army Advisory Board, and then I also help with our Sullivan County Republican Party. I'm past chairman, and I currently serve as ex officio on that board, and I've been involved with Salvation Army since 2013, and then the Republican Party since 2010. So on the board side for City Council, there's the First Tennessee Development District, there's the Networks Board, which is economic development, the Chamber of Commerce, the, let's see what else there is there.
Sewer Oversight? Former member of that board.
Yes, I have served on Sewer Oversight as well as Planning Commission.
Yeah.
There's also several opportunities where currently I'm just getting on board for the last 6 months with the Library Board. Some fascinating opportunities there of what's coming and how they're trying to help the workforce. And then some of those highlights certainly come in being able to spend the time with so many people, because it's a really broad group that comes together for those boards.
Yeah, right. Well, that's you mentioned economic development. We'll get to economic development here in just a few minutes, but I think it'd be great if we talked a little bit about planning. Our city council just finished a retreat at Stills Creek Park in the new Nature Center, I might add. And so why don't you go into a little bit about our past retreat?
Well, it starts with having a target. And we sat down the other day for our board retreat, our city council retreat, to have a discussion about where do we want to go? Where do we see the vision of the city? Are we comfortable with the current vision and the current mission, providing those great quality services, as well as what else do we need to do to get there? And so we made some adjustments to some of those goals. We also identified some other things that we hadn't captured the last time we went through a board retreat. So I think it's really important that we set the tone of where we want to go. Anybody who shoots an arrow, you need to have a target to where you're shooting it, right?
That's right.
If we're not aiming anywhere, we're not being intentional about what we're doing.
Sure.
And so if we're intentional, we can have some great results. And I think that's part of the importance. And then what comes next, we decide what those goals and objectives need to be. After we've decided those, that's the best part, is that's where we start to allocate resources, whether it's people or money, to what needs to be done and what the priority is.
Three main areas that we concentrated on. Number one was education. What are your thoughts there with education, and in particular our new middle school, other schools in the area? Just leave it up to you.
Sure. Our school system with Vance Middle and that opportunity to build a new facility there is a great opportunity, and I see that the school board's making continued progress. More recently, they interviewed their candidates for architecture and some engineering to help them finalize their decisions on location and then next steps. That's really exciting, and that's an opportunity that I don't want to steal any thunder that our school board has. But I look forward to seeing what they decide out of that, and I want to make sure that we're there to help support what's happening and make sure that we're able to help share the message of what's happening and the timing for how to be able to do this, because we do have those tax dollars in an account. It needs to be put into services that we can see. And the school board's actively working on that. So that's a great opportunity. Another that I really like is how we've been able to work with our city, with our high school, Tennessee High, to be able to provide advanced placement. This has been done with a joint venture of the industrial development, the school board, as well as our city council, to help fund some of those opportunities regarding advanced placement and, more importantly, the test that's taken to be able to show how well you perform.
It dovetails right with economic development, doesn't it? I mean, just how important our school system plays in economic development. And having kids that came out of our school system, we have a great administration, school board, and especially our teachers have done just really well, and it never ceases to amaze me the job that they do. We also talked a little bit about infrastructure. We had two other areas of concern. Infrastructure is another major area. Thoughts there?
One of the concerns we've had as we talk about paving, everybody uses the roads, whether it's a business, a resident, and even our tourists who come through and just pass through. It's really important we maintain our roads to a sufficient level so that we're not having the additional damage to vehicles and those things, but it also helps. It truly is the path that everyone follows to come through. And along with that, the thing you don't see that's so expensive as well is our water and our sewer system. Without those things in place, there's a lot of things that couldn't happen to the scale that we have them occurring right now. Some of that's industrial development with the extra capacity to be able to handle certain types of waste streams that other organizations just can't handle because they're already maxed out. We do have some capacity there, and it goes back to when we had more textile business in this area years and years ago. Right now, we're all right there, and we've tried to take very good care of it. But one of those concerns with paving, for instance, is we're on about a 40-year cycle of paving every mile of road in the city, and we're striving to see what we can do to get closer to a 20-year cycle.
Well, and you mentioned utilities just a little while ago. What a great asset we have in Bristol, Tennessee Essential Services. And 10 gigabyte community that we are, such reliable electricity, and infrastructure also includes our school system and and the facilities that they're in. So really, in a lot of ways, very blessed with all the assets that we do have.
Along with BTS, I just have to say it's remarkable to see a utility, the first utility to win the Malcolm Baldrige Award for quality, happen right here with Bristol, Tennessee Essential Services. That takes a lot of work, and I'm familiar with that type of quality award. Never been part of an organization that was awarded it, but it is remarkable. It is outstanding. It is truly world class.
And I believe, well, as a community, first off, we're all a part of that, right, with Bristol, Tennessee Essential Services. And I believe it may be the first utility to ever get that award.
Yes.
You can check me on that to make sure, but I believe that's the case. But
I believe that's accurate.
You know, one of the things under planning too is studying certain projects. What can what would happen if certain things were to unfold? So we've done studies on, for instance, music venues and things of that nature, new baseball stadium, other things. Any thoughts there, and how a municipality should be doing studies before taking taxpayer money and putting it towards something?
Part of that's finding the right balance. We see what we think are opportunities, and through our lens, sometimes it just makes sense. It certainly helps to have that independent perspective to say, let's look at this, and what are the areas, what are you trying to accomplish, rather than saying, I want this right here. Let's let the data drive a decision. And so studies are one way to do that. We can bring in some folks from out of the area who are experts in these fields. And several years ago, we had a convention study, convention hall or convention center discussed, and there were 3 different locations considered for that. And the value for that is, while yes, there might be some public dollars, the intent is to help identify what the opportunity is, characterize it, and then list pros and cons, so that then, as we have prospects who say, you know, you really don't have a convention center like we would use or like we have in other regions, we can provide that and say, here's some data to go along with justification and how it works and how it fits in the greater regional area. And as those opportunities get developed, that's where you have private people who look at these studies and say, I'd like to take advantage of that opportunity. And there may or may not be public dollars, but where we've seen the best opportunities have truly been in public and private collaborations, where there's a little bit of private money, there's a little bit of public money, there may be a few other sources of money that come together, and in the end it's remarkable. And one of those substantial examples of that is, while it didn't come directly out of a study, but public-private partnership, was the tennis courts for Ida Stone Jones tennis court facility. It's remarkable when those come together.
Really is. You know, the other thing too, that many times as a city council, we give our staff members difficult tasks. And one of the things that we felt was very important as a city council was to brand and market Bristol to the world. Talk a little bit about that. Speaking of which, you have you know, a little something from the branding process.
Certainly. We're all recognized for what Bristol is, regardless of what we think it is. And that was demonstrated through what they found as they did the study work. Bristol is a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And at the end of the day, it's really what stands out the most to you. And I would say it also can kind of be seasonal, because there's a whole lot of time where we're all about racing. There's some times, certainly like Rhythm and Roots, where we're all about the music. But what stands out to you the most, you know? And Bristol is home for me. That certainly stands out the most for me. And when you look at what it means, we have embraced who we are. And when we do that, we're not trying to fake it until you make it. We're trying to say, this is who we are. This is what we have to offer. And at the end of the day, there's so much, whether it's the hiking 20 minutes up the road or the lake, or the trails right here at Steel Creek,
Mm.
the birthplace of country music just a couple of blocks away. And one of those that stood out to me about the branding was people see Bristol as Bristol, regardless of the imaginary lines. It is about how we are joined together at that line that goes between the two yellow lines down State Street.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a great opportunity, and we just need to capitalize of, I'm going to Bristol.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, that's part of my message, and I've been grateful to see how this has unfolded. I have actually, one of those smaller notes for me is I've tried to take advantage of a number of my Christmas gifts were Bristol-related paraphernalia to give to friends of mine who were some out of the area and some in the area. So it was enjoyable to help share that message and to get that brand out, because the more people see it, the more it becomes real to them that, hey, listen, I love to ask what Bristol is, because I found some people think it's a sleepy community, and then some people who have actually gotten here and realized it's not sleepy. There's everything you could want to do. Sometimes you might have to drive 20 minutes for it, but what's 20 minutes? If you're in a metro area, you're driving 30 minutes to go most places, and that's without traffic much of the time. So it's a great opportunity.
You know, our prior councils, our prior citizens in the past have done a lot of studies, planning, visioning, and something that came out of that, 4 or 5 specific items in conjunction with Bristol, Virginia, have been the train station, birthplace of country music that you mentioned a little while ago. There was one study that was done on the Beaver Creek Walk that turned out that the Beaver Creek Walk may not be something that actually fits us, similar to what's in San Antonio, but what came out of that was a comprehensive study to reduce our floodwaters in the downtown area. So, you know, you may expect one thing out of planning and a study and envisioning, but you may get another once it's done. So I think we've got a good history of that. But, you know, this kind of dovetails straight into economic development. So I thought we might talk a minute about industrial parks, industrial development, and that type of thing.
One of the things you don't see very much right now is all the talk that we've had, and also some of the monies that have been lined up to be able to flatten out some of the properties we have for economic development. Partnership Park 2, the Bristol Business Park, also some of the conversations with Norfolk Southern regarding the opportunity to have a side rail access where industries would be able to have some loading and unloading space right off the main line. Those are the opportunities that we see. One example, in the last 18 months, we had an opportunity for a large facility. They were looking for approximately 35 acres that was flat, and we had just recently gotten approval to add some state dollars to be able to flatten out one of the Bristol Business Park locations. We were about a year behind another facility that was already flattened, so we lost that project opportunity. But what that means is that other facility that went to another location, that's no longer an opportunity for the next site selector who comes through. Now it's, and we haven't finished the work. It's still getting to where we're going to be able to do the work, but at the end of that, that's going to be what we say pad ready. It's ready to put concrete on it to whatever grade you need, build it, and that's 35 acres. That could be a 400,000 square foot building right there. That could be some great industrial jobs. And then not only do we have that, but we have other opportunities. Even it's coming, but we'll talk maybe a little more about Aerospace Park later. In Partnership Park 2, there's some good opportunities. The ground's just not laid out flat like you might see somewhere in Middle Tennessee.
You hit the nail on the head. It's getting the property ready. In general, we've found that it saves 3 to 6 months when you have pad-ready sites for industrial development, where, as you mentioned, somebody can come in, dig footers, put a pad of concrete down and go vertical with a building. It makes a huge difference in the amount of time it takes from the time the boardroom says it's time to go till the time that the product is starting to come out the door of the manufacturing facility.
Right.
You mentioned Aerospace Park, which is a great cooperative venture through the state, but in particularly most of the money is going to be coming locally through Sullivan County and Washington County, Tennessee, Bristol, Johnson City, and Kingsport. Why don't we talk about that a little bit?
This is a great vision and opportunity that's developed in some area that's not really developable land is going to be raised up to be even with the runway, so that we have 160 acres that can be turned into industrial development right there with runway access. And as that has been discussed, I think it's remarkable how we've been able to coalesce. This has truly been a regional impact. And to understand that a little further, we needed some legislation for our airport authority to be able to issue these bonds, and they didn't have that. So with the help of our state legislative organization, locally those represent our Senator John Lundberg, Representative Crawford, and then on out for our Sullivan County partners, Representative Hill and Representative Halsey. We had people all the way down to the Knoxville area and Morristown voting to help support this as a Northeast Tennessee delegation. That's some great cooperation, because they see this is bigger than just Sullivan County, bigger than just Bristol, or bigger than just Kingsport. And with all those people coming together to make this happen, it's remarkable. And locally, meaning the counties that you've identified as well as the cities, have committed to 50% of the funding, and the state's already provided about $4.1 million. And there are some other opportunities we're going to continue to pursue to see how close we can get, and we'll also see what the state budget does this year. Mm-hmm. I think there's going to be opportunity, and we'll continue to listen and see where we need to help support our legislators as they see an opportunity to add a little bit more to that project. Mm-hmm. And I do understand we've already had our first inquiry, just to see what it's about, the timing and those things, because we have Northeast States aviation program. Our education part is trying to support those more effectively, whether it's the mechanic side of it or even the airframe certification that they've announced that they'll be providing. Mm-hmm. When we put all these pieces together, it makes for a very strong message and, more importantly, a strong support system for an industry that wants to come there. So it's not supposed to come until 2020 to be final and ready, mm-hmm. but there's going to be some dirt moving pretty soon on parts of it.
We all already have interest, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's so important, the education piece, preparing the future workforce for those aerospace jobs. Not only does the Bristol, Tennessee school system do a great job of preparing our kids for college and the work-ready community in general, but we have great partner with Northeast State, Virginia Highlands Community College, with King University, Emory and Henry. All of the neighboring colleges, mm-hmm. I think, have done just tremendous work in the sense of preparing and being ready to prepare our workforce for the future. So, great point about Northeast State. Right near and adjacent to the airport is Sullivan Networks. Why don't you tell a little bit about Sullivan Networks? You serve on that board. It's a very important board for economic development. We get a lot of state leads from that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Networks?
So I like to think of Sullivan Networks as one door of many to find those opportunities. Those opportunities primarily that they field are the industrial. They don't deal much with the commercial, like retail and things like that, but those opportunities where it could be expansion of existing business, which is the bulk of what we see when we see industrial development. We also see opportunities for people who are saying, you've got some strong infrastructure along fiber and your electric services. We see, for example, Teleperformance. While they had some footprint here. They decided to expand a couple of times now, and they continue to do that. Even recently, we had a Gero come to 394 at a former telecommunications office for a call center, and they provide a whole different set than a whole different set of services that the prior people did. But that facility was not even vacant for 90 days. But they recognized what we had and were using fiber instead of copper for their phone services and those things, and it was just a wonderful opportunity. Networks is also I guess you would say, our gatekeeper for Sullivan County, to be the point of contact for our state. So if the state gets a call and says, I'm looking for 40 acres that has this kind of water, this kind of power, and this kind of fiber access, where can I go? And that's when the state will call up. They have a list of different people to contact. For us, they call Networks and say, do you have something that meets this size and this criteria? You've got sometimes a few hours, sometimes a couple of days to give a response of any qualifying properties. And one of the things that shows that Networks is bigger than just our community, sometimes we don't fit. But it's important to say, hey, we don't have something that fits, but we appreciate you thinking of us, and maybe there's another opportunity next time.
Sure.
Having that conversation is really important, and you have to be upfront. If you don't have it, it's okay to say you don't have it. Now, if we see after we've gotten 50 requests for something, we say, is there a way that we could get this? Because this seems to be high demand. That starts to change the conversation to what do we need to invest in. And Networks works very closely with that, with Commissioner Rolfe's Office of Economic Development for the state. And those relationships, they travel a variety of places, and that's actually one of the keys of our red carpet tour. While former Mayor Michelle Renning had brought that concept and said, let's do something like this, and it's been Bristol-led, Networks has really champion that for us, and that brings in a lot of state members of economic development, as well as those site selectors who say, what do you have to offer? Or I've not been to Bristol before. You've blown my socks off. This is really impressive, and they target those people. There's reasons why each one of them have been pinpointed to say, we need to get you to see what we have here in this area. And those have led to several opportunities. Some of them we've missed, but I'll give you another example. Some of those consultants have also put us in rooms with people just so we could practice and hone our skills to have a more effective presentation for other site selectors and other companies who are looking at this area. When you can be around really sharp people and they will help sharpen your skills, that's a great relationship to be in. And I'd like to think that we can help the state as our chairman, or not our chairman, but our executive director, Clay Walker. He just came off of being the Tennessee Economic Partnership chairman after a year, and it meant some extra travel, but it also helped him build some relationships for our community across the state. And some of that was even national travel. So he's built some great bridges in what he's trying to do in Sullivan County. And I know for a fact that he is very, very pleased and very excited to be able to represent that property of what Aerospace Park is, as well as the ancillary properties that can feed into that.
Sure. And what a great host that Bristol Motor Speedway is, and what a more impressive venue to bring site selectors for our red carpet tour that we do every year. Clay and the Networks team do a great job in getting people to our city and our county to see, exactly how we do business and what we do business. And I'll also say too, you currently serve on the Chamber of Commerce board. I've served on that board in the past. What do you think about the Chamber of Commerce?
They are the welcome mat for us, and not in a getting walked over sort, but in a welcome to our community, how can we help? Whether it's the initiatives of what we need, I'll give you an example. They have ambassadors that offer some tours downtown. So you don't just have to wander around aimlessly downtown. There are some folks who can help you even in the off hours of learning what's happening and some of the history of what's downtown. So I think that's a special opportunity. They work very hard to support our businesses through ribbon cuttings, through training opportunities, and also with them is where we have our Convention and Visitors Bureau, and they work hand in hand with both our visitor centers out on the interstate and so many other agencies. We don't see a lot of what they do because they're trying to send the message outside of our region to say, come check out Bristol. Yeah. And that's special because we leverage, because the Bristol Chamber receives monies from both the Virginia side and the Tennessee side, we can leverage those dollars to a greater effect to say, come to Bristol, again, regardless of which initials for Tennessee or Virginia. Come to Bristol. We have great stuff to offer, whether it's indoor, outdoor, and have a great experience.
Beth Reinhardt and the team at the Chamber and Convention and Visitors Bureau do a really good job at connecting businesses to resources, and so we're fortunate. And that's Bristol, Virginia, and Bristol, Tennessee as well. And you mentioned also how important they are in the downtown area. We do have an entity that came from a visioning process back 20 years ago called Believe in Bristol. So many projects, that's one fruition of that planning and studying and visioning from the past. Why don't you talk a little bit about Believe in Bristol?
So Believe in Bristol is known as a Main Street program, which receives state funding from both Virginia and Tennessee. And one of the ways that they support both our business and our downtown residents is, while they focus in the downtown district, they find and help connect the opportunities. I'll give you an example. So sometimes, let me back up. So my first involvement with Lead Bristol was helping Believe in Bristol do a community service project. That opportunity was trying to put together more information for a business-emphasized quarterly meeting to try and get people who weren't just retailers involved in Believe in Bristol. And when we started to realize who all was downtown, started to realize, wait, you can get your clothes downtown, you can get your shoes, you can get a whole lot of food. There's a variety of accounting services, legal services, realtor services. There is most of what you need downtown without having to go too far. And so some of that aha for me was certainly recognizing just because the accountant is on the second floor across the street from where I really enjoy having lunch doesn't mean that I'm aware of it. Right. And so those conversations that started to realize, wait, there's somebody across the street or upstairs from me who can help me with that. It almost has that incubator effect of saying, hey, somebody's right down the hall or somebody's right next door. They can help me out. And that's what's really special about the downtown area. And Believe in Bristol is the facilitator for much of that. And they are I like to think of them as a champion for small business. Yeah. One of those things that they've done here in the last few years, and I was glad to be part of it early on their what was then called Economic Restructuring Committee, was some folks came together to provide, well, first the state of Virginia stepped forward with some grant money that we were able to offer in like a small business startup reward or grant, and that has since the dollars have grown. We've had some other people come in and sponsor, both private and public, and those opportunities have kind of turned into a Bristol Shark Tank, if you will, to say, here's what's next.
Yeah.
And one of our most recent recipients of that was an escape room business downtown who was able to make an expansion as a result of that opportunity. So, and there are more who have done that too over the last several years. I know there's a downtown brewery on the Virginia side who was also one of those grant award winners.
Sure.
So they've done a lot. They also help with design and arts downtown. So some of the sculptures and those elements that you see with arts in public places, they've had a strong hand in helping to craft what we want the artistic side of downtown to look like.
Well, I think it's a great it's great for us to be able to say in Bristol that we are a city of big business, small business, and entrepreneurs. And it's one of the things that we try to really concentrate on is what can we do to help those businesses, first off, open up new businesses, maybe relocate here, or I should say open up another division here, and also help our current businesses expand. And so I know we have great, exciting news coming in the near future about small business and entrepreneurship. Can't wait to share that. We want to make sure things are in the right direction before we share that. But you know, when you talk about economic development, you've got to talk about economic impact. And we have so many different organizations and businesses that are huge economic impacts for the city of Bristol. The crown jewel that we've had since the 60s is Bristol Motor Speedway. Why don't you talk about a little bit of Bristol Motor Speedway?
Well, I'll give a call out. Don't forget that dragway that was in
exactly.
operation even before the Speedway was what it is today.
Yeah.
The economic impact, again, regionally for the Speedway is over $1 billion. It's remarkable. But the really special part about that is one of those things that Jeff Bird always was focused on was exceeding expectations, and they try and give a quality experience and make sure that you want to come back. I think that was one of the special opportunities that developed out of that battle at Bristol,
Yes.
the UT VT game,
Yes.
and even the Kenny Chesney concert that happened the night before. You had a lot of people come visit Bristol and come into a Coliseum who had never been in there before. When they realized it, I know I heard firsthand multiple times, I've got to come back and see a race. That place is remarkable.
Yeah.
And so you had crossover from people who never would come to a motorsports event who came for a football game and packed it out, mind you. And then also some great fans of country music come out, and also potentially some of them it was their first visit inside the Speedway. But that is great for our community, because what happens when we talk about economic impact, you understand it. It's I'm going to have something to eat before the show. I might need to fill up the car with some fuel. I might need to stop and grab a few other things while I'm here. I certainly need to get a few souvenirs before I leave. Those are the additional trends. Oh, and it's going to be a late night, so I need to get a hotel room.
Yeah.
So those opportunities are how it helps everyone else. And that's part of why the Speedway works so hard with the Visitors Bureau and so many other partners. I know for Speedway events, they have hotels that they're coordinating with that are more than 60 miles away to help out with the demand for a race. That's remarkable. And we have others like Birthplace of Country Music right here in the downtown. People come from all over the world. At the end, if you've not been through recently, you can go through and see the wall where folks can sign with their comments and maybe their name or where they're from. They have people from all over the world that come to see the Birthplace of Country Music. That's remarkable. And that's part of our culture and part of our heritage. And to think of what is amazing to me there is when you see how many people, current day artists as well as those that many of us grew up with, realize what they contribute to say, those folks helped me understand this, or here's how they helped me.
Mm.
I took some things out of their music from the sessions of 1927, and I modified it to put it into this new rock song or this new jazz song. There's so many different ways that it contributed. It really is mind-blowing.
Yeah, and Rhythm and Roots, what a great weekend Rhythm and Roots is. Talking about economic impact. I mean, you're talking about some great groups, current groups that come in. It really is amazing just exactly what all comes out of the birthplace of country music, and especially Rhythm and Roots. It also doesn't hurt when we have a small gecko that comes
Yes.
and wants to advertise straight on State Street. Is that right?
That's right.
I mean, the Geico commercial was, I don't remember now exactly how many tens of millions of dollars that was worth to Bristol in national exposure. But it was really something else, don't you think?
Yes. And they came to realize that opportunity because some of the folks who are involved with that marketing agency said, well, they came to Rhythm and Roots.
Mm.
They saw what it was down here, and they said, this is a great place. I've got to have a Geico commercial here.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months later, they were filming one.
Yeah.
And you couldn't pay for that kind of coverage because every time you see every time you see that Tennessee and Virginia placard in the road,
Yeah.
you know that's Bristol. Bristol's
Yeah.
right in the middle of that placard. That's advertising. We've had people come from all over for that too, and I know we've had some patient residents who have recognized, oh, it must be a tourist. They're standing in the middle of the road or laying in the middle of the road
Yeah.
to get a picture.
Yeah.
So it's fun, and that's an easy way to get people to connect. Are you in Virginia or Virginia C?
Yeah. Say that 3 times, right?
Yeah, right. So.
Well, you know, also too, you talked about, you know, really 3 cornerstones, Bristol Motor Speedway, and then you've got, you know, birthplace country music in our downtown area, and you know, another piece to that triangle is a great shopping destination called the Pinnacle, and
Indeed.
you're talking about economic power and impact. Talk a little bit about everything that's happening at the Pinnacle.
The Pinnacle started out of a strong vision for what it could be, and through some legislation, again, our state folks took this to Nashville and said, this is an opportunity, and it didn't just benefit us. That legislation has benefited several others, but at the end of the day, when Steve Johnson was able to align those things, bring it together, and then also said, this is bigger than just me. I need some partners who know how to do this and bring some other relationships. He brought in some very talented folks who have done several projects around nationally, and then he was able to bring some incredible partners in to be the anchors with both Bass Pro and Belk, and then several others began lining up, and now it's a destination of choice with a remarkable movie theater experience and so many different, you know, you've got activities for the kids all the way through the adults, and then just about everything you would need to shop for is there, and there's plenty of choices to eat, and there's more coming. And you know, it took some challenges to help paint the picture, and our legislators were able to do that in Nashville to say, this is what this could mean. And while we understood some of the elements of that, to see what it's become, and you know, I know I've heard a couple of people say, you know, I don't know that I want to get out there in that Black Friday traffic at the Pinnacle.
Yeah.
But having a lot of commerce happening out there is remarkable, and I know I find myself out there a whole lot more than I had anticipated initially, but I also realize it's right here. And one thing that We understand it because we've served on council. We know how that sales tax dollar is split out.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that's remarkable to me is for a share of that ends up going to the county, not only does it help our city schools, it helps the county schools, it helps county general budget, it also helps Kingsport's schools. That's a regional impact. And then there's all the people who work there. Not everybody lives in Bristol, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's right.
But they do come from around different areas, county, city, otherwise, even different, across the state line. I know I have seen license plates from as far as, I was up there last week, I saw a plate from Idaho. I saw a plate from Connecticut the week before that. You just never know where you're going to see a license plate from there.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you also see some of these larger buses making their dinner breaks there. And
sure,
it's great to have.
The great thing about it is what started that boom of synergy in and around Exit 74 was Wellmont Health Systems.
True.
Bristol Regional Medical Center. Of Wellmont, that is the only profitable entity within the Wellmont system. And we can't, by the way, it's our largest employer.
Indeed.
And you can't really talk about Bristol and the economy unless you talk about healthcare a little bit and about Wellmont. Anything you want to say about that?
Healthcare is fundamental, and with the conversion with the integration, merging of Mountain States and Wellmont, those are two very large entities, and without, let me add another piece of education there, without ETSU's healthcare training, Northeast States training, and several other folks who can help bring some skills to the table. Both King University has had a nursing program in the past. Milligan's done some things there. Virginia Highlands. There's been a lot of effort because, as you stated, Bristol Regional Medical Center is our number one employer in Bristol, and it helps. If you can't get help either in Bristol, Kingsport, or Johnson City, you're probably going to have to go further up to potentially one of the university hospitals for those specialized treatments, whether that's a Knoxville, a Charlotte, somewhere further up into Virginia, or even down to Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So it's it provides so much, so you don't have to travel as far as you might otherwise need to. Gives us a lot of that convenience, and they have remarkable technology there that some communities, one of those examples is the CyberKnife. Very few of those around, and for our community to have that just a few miles away, there's a whole lot of training and emphasis, and there's a whole lot of technology at work, and without those things we couldn't have some of the quality of life that we do have. And fortunately, many of us haven't had to use a lot of their services, but when you do, so many of those things are right here in our backyard to be able to use, and that is a huge relief to me. I'll share, I have a friend who recently had a stroke last summer, 45 years of age, and where he was, it was an hour and a half by car to the closest hospital that could really help him with what he needed. And so he's doing much better now, but I know if something happens to me, I can easily be, if I'm anywhere in the Tri-Cities, I'm probably only about 20 minutes away from any given hospital. So I feel very good about my safety and my health when it comes to being right here in this region. And if there's something more severe that happens, we do have level 1 trauma centers right here in the area. Yeah. So worst case, if something where I needed to go down to Knoxville or Nashville, I'm not that far away from those, but I know I can get at least first-line care and most of my secondary and tertiary care right here. So.
Wellmont's a great community partner, and the nurses and doctors that there are amazing. And you mentioned the technology that's there. We have a lot of private dollars that have gone into cancer research and cancer centers, for just to give you an example. You know, thanks to everybody that has pitched in and put money into Wellmont from the private sector to make our hospital a premier entity within the country. So Wellmont does a great job, and it's a great gateway into our downtown. Back to downtown real quick. You know, one of the things that's happening right now is we are replacing trees. We're not taking the trees out, and we're going to put new trees in, but you know, replacing trees downtown. It's going to be a beautiful scenery down there. But one of the other things too that relates back to economic impact and economic development is the hotels that are coming downtown. You want to talk just a second about that?
Well, part of what the city provides is we want to make sure that we're able to invest in areas where business is trying to be successful. One of those parts is investing in our downtown. And you know how that goes. If we're not giving care to whether it's the road or the sidewalks, those aren't owned by any particular business. They're public. And so this is one of the ways that we are investing in our downtown to improve those things. You know, last year we had what appeared to be a healthy tree had a pretty sizable limb break and damage a vehicle. It was unfortunate that happened, but we also know that those pear trees that are down there are about 10 years older than what they were intended to be in that downtown area. So with this change, while there will be a little bit of disruption, we saw, and you can see it even in some of the pictures that are being taken now as they're pulling those trees out, some of those roots had run up over the enclosure that they were designed to stay within, and causing problems right outside of that, even with the sidewalks and some of the bricks there. So, and that's part of why we have some of the bricks there, frankly, so that it is more flexible and we can work with it as it changes. But it will give a very good aesthetic appeal downtown. It will have multiple colors as we get into the fall. So those will be coming, depending on how the weather cooperates. We definitely will see them before the race gets here in April. And it'll take a few years for those to really get established well. But it's going to add, and we did this as a database decision too, because we had University of Tennessee's sciences get involved and provide us several recommendations. You know, we're making data-driven decisions, and they also gave us some recommendations on sizes that would be good to set up. And so that's what we've done. And Bristol, Virginia is funding the trees that are going on their side, and we're funding the trees going on our side. And the two cities are having their staffs work together to figure out how to get these things out with minimal impact and disruption to our downtown merchants.
Well, and also too, I wanted to touch on just a little bit more in our downtown area. You know, our West State Street corridor and the new zoning that's happening there has really got some. It's not finished yet, but that really looks to me something that's going to have a big impact in that area of State Street. And we have a new hotel. It's been reported in the paper that is coming to that area of State Street, just behind the Chamber of Commerce. Any thoughts about that redevelopment zoning?
It's not often you hear that the city's changing zoning to actually relax it more than what it is, and that's what's happened in this case. We realized that there's on-street parking in some of these areas. There's some other things that are very consistent with what we formerly call downtown. And so we realized that there were some changes that really would be conducive to saying, we make these changes for instance, let's not require them to add 15 feet of grass between the sidewalk and their building when there's no grass between them right now, if they were to demolish that building and build it back. So there's a number of those that create a more flexible zoning requirement. So for instance, you can also, if you're a restaurant but you don't own a lot that has enough space for parking, you can have an adjacent lot or a lot within so many feet to be able to have your patrons park. And so with those opportunities, I think the biggest challenge for some folks who see, hey, we could do this or we could do that, is being able to take to and put together a few of those properties. And I understand that that was probably, given the size of what the Housing Authority had on public hearing for the for this hotel announcement, it sounds like they had to do a little bit of work like that too, because there are several parcels of property affected by that development opportunity. And I'm not going to steal any of their thunder, but I will say I am glad to see that we have some folks investing in our downtown, extending that, and I think a very good point that's been made regarding that hotel is it can be an anchor for and also a seed for expanding further development up State Street, West State Street more specifically.
And again, it's one of those planning processes that has to be checked out very closely. I think our staff, the City of Bristol, has done a great job in looking at all angles of things, especially when we request or it comes from a planning commission or an industrial development board to plan correctly and really study things. And so I think it's another testament to how we can foster development by businesses by placing certain things in place, like rezoning, like infrastructure, that allows, in other words, we just got to get out of the way and let business and private entities take over. So I think it's huge what we've done. You know, we've got to dream a little bit, right? And the dream in Bristol since the early 70s was to have passenger rail service within Bristol. My mother bought a ticket for me on the very last train that left out of Bristol, going towards Abingdon. And you know, that's been a dream for a long time now, and the dream is getting closer. Why don't you talk a little bit about passenger rail?
The key for passenger rail is continuing to connect, to realize it's not just about the destination of Bristol, but Bristol's part of that path to connect through Knoxville and Chattanooga and on to Birmingham or Atlanta, or even further down the corridor of I-40 towards Nashville. But as we run through the region, we've already seen it get to Roanoke. And so it continues to march further and further west, and given the topography and the travel volumes, it's just very natural to continue to expand down through our part of where Tennessee and Virginia meet and continue on through, and whether it turns a little bit further south to Atlanta or further south or a little further west towards Birmingham remains to be seen, but it's an ongoing conversation, and we need to have that conversation, because what it means is it's another mode of transportation. You know, many of us have used an airplane. Many of us have at some point ridden a bus. All of us often ride in a car. So the convenience of rail, it's very, very safe. It's safer than being in a car. And hey, all right, we're going to have a stop in Bristol. In 2 hours we'll be departing for our next destination. What do? You step out, you find a coffee shop or a good dinner place, see a few sights, or if it's a longer stop, you get a tour of the birthplace of country music while you're here.
Sure.
And then you continue on. And those experiences, I'm glad you took that ticket but still came back.
Yeah.
It's special, and it's heritage, because we are uniquely positioned with assets of both Virginia and Tennessee to be able to work on both sides of the state line with the rail coalition that is trying to help, that is increasing the visibility of this project. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to see continued meaningful expansion of what rail is doing. And as you look at the trends of travel, we see when we go off to National League of Cities, more and more about less individual travel modes and more about mass travel modes, and rail certainly fits into that.
Well, our rail coalition has successfully received or is receiving grant funding of over $500,000 for studies.
Yes.
To get the rail service here. And if it weren't for those that worked within the rail coalition 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and further, we wouldn't be at the position we are right now. So we're close. It'd be great within the next 3 to 5 years if we had passenger rail service here. So we're dreamers, right? We love to dream, and hopefully that dream is going to become a reality soon. I want to finish up with to kind of pull everything together. Different tourism areas, shopping destinations, economic development. And one of the things that we're doing right now, which is a major task, is our comprehensive plan and what its purpose is. Can you go into that, and we'll finish up with that?
Yes. Our comprehensive plan helps tie in a number of different studies we have, along with quite a lot of community input, so that at the end of the day we can say, here's one giant plan, and then from there, here are the deliverables, here are how we can achieve those goals. And it covers a span of things from what we want to see in our community. For instance, the opportunities around what we have for parks. Do they meet the needs? What else do we see those needs being? And then also, what do we need to see for? What is it that I like to? Why is it that I like to live in Bristol? What is it that I really like? What are the detractors? And having a conversation, and then identifying, are these things that we need to take action on, or are they not? But most importantly, as a big picture, the comprehensive plan definitely takes that long-term approach. We're talking 20 years in broad numbers to say, where do we want to go? And then we can start to say, all right, here's what we need to do in the first few years. Here's what we would need to do next. And understand, it is a document that will change based on what we're able to accomplish, what dynamics change. If we had someone come in and say, I want to take over, I'm one business and I want to take over every acre you have available in Partnership Park 2. Wow, that's less emphasis on maybe 4 or 5 properties that we're trying to market. But those pieces all come together, and it starts to change the dynamic of what our issues are. Technology has certainly advanced us a lot. You think of what the gigabit community has done, and the other services that BTS provides. We have those opportunities that some others struggle with reliability. We don't struggle with that reliability issue because they've worked so hard and invested there. So what are those things that we as a city can be more reliable with and get better quality and find the right balance of, it doesn't have to be the Taj Mahal, but we want it to be as first class as we can to make sure it's a quality service that we deliver as a city to our residents and any of the consumers that come along to use those, like our water, for instance. Everybody who comes and stays here a little bit is going to use the water that we clean, we prepare, we make sure it's safe and of good quality. Well, all these pieces come together to say, what do you love about your community? What can we do better? What do you see that's a problem right now? And what else should we be looking at? And certainly the core for a city is the infrastructure. And for me, I feel very strongly that part of that infrastructure is also, you know, we haven't talked about fire and police, but they're part of the making sure that we have a safe community, and they don't guarantee our safety, but if we need them, they can be there pretty quickly to help reduce the risk of fire, you know, through awareness programs, but also help be there if a fire does happen to put it out before it's a total loss, hopefully. And those are the kind of things that drive down insurance rates on homes and businesses. And I know I bounced around a little bit, but comprehensive planning can have a huge impact for the better on where we're headed. And it's definitely a 20-year type plan, and it will change. And it's up to us and our predecessors, and our successors, to be able to have that conversation with the community to say, where are we heading and where do we need to change?
Sure.
What's next? But always have a target in mind.
Sure. And you mentioned police and fire, and you know, we have a great Parks and Recreation department, planning department, public relations department. You know, our industrial recruitment team, economic development team, led by our city manager, Bill Sora. And isn't it great to be a part of a city and serve for a city with other great council members like Michelle Renning, Lee Powers, and Margaret Fire-Robin. Want to say thanks, Jack, and you know, thanks for your time that you serve us, and so thanks to Mayor Jack Young for his time today. My name's Chad Keene. We want to say thank you for watching Conversation Starters. Thank you.